They were very careful about who they made the loan to. And many years ago, when I took out a loan in my home, the bank did all the due diligence in the world to ensure not only that I could make the first payment or the first year's payment, but I had a 30-year fixed mortgage, and they wanted a guarantee that I would be able to pay over that 30 years. So they called my employer, not only to find out if I had a job, but whether I would continue to have a job. That discipline in the market has disappeared because what banks do with their loans now is they make the loan and then they sell the loan to third parties. Third parties essentially buy stock in the loan. The loans are bundled into a basket, offered to the world, they buy stock in it. Owning that stock is not a derivative because you're an actual owner of the loan. What happened in our situation, especially when the mortgage lenders wanted to take risks with subprime loans, that is, people who did not have the likelihood to pay them off, is that people were so excited about the possibility of making money off this that they ran out of the actual mortgages and securities in the mortgages. So what the banks decided to do was to create bets on whether or not the mortgages would be paid off. They were synthetic securities. That is to say, you didn't own anything, but you were betting that the borrower would pay the mortgage off. And the matter gets even worse than that, because the most classic thing that I think people are aware of today is the AIG situation. And I think most people understand that AIG was an insurance company. It was the world's largest insurance company. It was very, very successful. But AIG decided to get into the business of insuring whether or not these securities instruments, whether they be real ownership or synthetic ownership of that, they would insure the value of whatever payments were made and the returns. So you could well imagine people would be saying, well, I am betting on the question of whether somebody who on the face of it may not be able to pay off the loan. That's a risky proposition. And companies and investment banks and banks like AIG said, don't worry, we'll insure it. The problem is the insurance, unlike normal insurance that you and I get on our life, our home, our cars, Congress decided to deregulate this market. So there were no rules as to how this would happen. And in a company like AIG, they had over 20 divisions. All but one were hugely successful, and on the day AIG, September 16, 2008, went busto, the regulated divisions had $20 billion in reserves. The one division that was issuing these insurance policies in an unregulated format never had to put capital aside for the day when those policies would be triggered. And so we woke up on September 16, 2008 to find out that there was insurance owed, no money to pay it, and the taxpayer in the initial go-round paid $85 billion. In the later go-round, we've gone up to $165 billion. So we're paying off unregulated instruments that look like insurance policies, but AIG never set aside the capital to do it. And by the way, the subdivision or division that did this was all the way over in London. It was a tiny little operation. AIG's equity value was $200 billion. This little operation issued $400 billion in insurance on these bets as to whether or not people would pay their mortgages. If you globalize this beyond AIG to the world, the estimates are there is a $4 trillion worldwide hole in the economy because of commitments that were made in unregulated instruments that did not require the people who gave the insurance to set aside the capital to make payments. They had a utopian view in the subprime market that housing prices would always go up, and no matter how risky the loan was on the day the loan was made, that the house would appreciate in value, and even someone who couldn't afford their house because of the appreciated value would. So people like AIG, who are making all these guarantees, are operating under a utopian view as we're never going to get in trouble. And there are all these crazy people out there who want to insure their investments. We're going to get premiums. They thought they were printing money, never realizing the day would come when housing prices would drop, the mortgages wouldn't get paid, everything they were insuring would collapse, and so now we, the taxpayer, are paying those insurance policies. The fact that we, the taxpayer, gave AIG $160 billion, not for AIG, but to pay the people who made the bets that the mortgages would not be paid off. So in other words, we're sending money through AIG. Goldman Sachs got $14 billion. And we don't know whether Goldman Sachs got that money because they had a real interest in whether the loans were being paid off or whether they had a synthetic interest. In other words, like somebody betting on the Super Bowl, they bet that people would not pay their mortgages. They won those bets. AIG didn't have the money, so you and I paid AIG so AIG could win effectively the winner of the Super Bowl person being the person who has bet big that people cannot pay their mortgages. It's one thing for us to have an economic problem because people can't pay their mortgages, and money is lost to the lenders or the whole economy for real problems here. But I believe 3 times as much money is being lost, not because people really lost their mortgages, because 3 times the value of the loss of the mortgage is a bet that's been placed by wealthy institutions or wealthy individuals. So in other words, when you hear that all this money is being shoved out into the economy to save these institutions, they've booked these bets. When Goldman won its bets, it put that down on its balance sheet. If it didn't get paid off on its bets, its financial statement would have gone haywire. And so we are in the business of stepping into the casino and paying off the casino's obligations so all these huge financial institutions who are already in trouble don't get in worse trouble. Yes, the value of a derivative is I can get an insurance policy against a real loss. The non-economic value is I can get an insurance policy on someone else's misery. You cannot do that in the insurance world. I can't buy an insurance policy in your house. But in this deregulated world, 3 times the number of policies were issued to people who did not have anything at risk, simply wanted to make a bet that homeowners would not pay their mortgages. Now, if there's an economic value to that, I need some further education.
Because of the derivatives in the world today, and the derivatives in the real estate market. Now, this is another whole section. When you're dealing with Dubai World, you're dealing with big mega finance and big banking and the derivatives that have been created out of thin air, so-called money, which is nothing but paper. And that's the reason I stress so much in DVD number 1. Get out of paper of every form, shape, form, whatever it is. It's worth the money it's written on. These derivatives are literally worthless, but yet they're traded as money. Now, this has brought about something very drastic in the real estate market, and you are not going to see a recovery of the real estate market anytime soon because of derivatives. Okay, now we're going to do a section on derivatives in the real estate market. In America, mainly, but you could say worldwide, real estate's doing the same thing. But in America, so right now, watch for just a moment as we show you the real estate market in relation to derivatives, which really makes it drastic.
How do you create a subprime derivative, and how do you blow it up? Senior economics reporter Steve Leisman knows, and he's here to explain with the help of the axis of easel here. Stephen?
We call this burning down the house,
yes,
because that's sort of what's been happening. This looks like the books of some hedge funds or investment banks we know.
Right now it does,
now that they've had these subprimes blow up. But what we have to do first is we have to create it first. Then we'll show you how it went bad.
All
so
right.
Work with me on this, Bill. If you don't understand anything here, you let me know.
I always do.
You start off very simply here. You take a bunch of mortgages here, okay? Joe, Fred, Jane, okay? They're $100,000